What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So if you've been holding out to upgrade your video card, waiting for Nvidia to show their Ampere lineup with the RTX 30 series cards, you were probably pretty happy with the presentation they put on yesterday. There were several cards there with some pretty good value, believe it or not. We go into these Nvidia presentations thinking we might have to overspend for performance, but gotta say, I was a little surprised here. We're gonna go over all the announcements from that event when it comes to the different cards. Also, we get to talk a bit about a big update to the eShop that'll make it a little easier if you accidentally pre-order something to kind of fix that purchase and cancel it. Oh, and TGS, Tokyo Game Show 2020. The schedule for this is posted, and it surprised a lot of us. Specifically, the company that will be opening Tokyo Game Show for nearly an hour-long event. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below. We are working to hit 500,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And we're going to start today with an update from the video yesterday with Ubisoft putting a line in their explanation around upgrades from this gen to next gen because it described the PS5 as not being able to play their PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, or PlayStation 3 library, whereas the Xbox Series X, of course, plays everything back to the original Xbox. That's at least been brought up for backwards compatibility. It still has to be added to the Series X library, and that team's kind of moved on now to the Series X, so looking forward to see what they have for us. But that line that Ubisoft put in their description around upgrading from the PS4 to the PS5 regarding PS1, 2, and 3 has been removed. After going live yesterday with the video, a little before that, the line was completely scrubbed from their website, and now people are wondering if Ubisoft accidentally went live with information they should not have that maybe was embargoed or was not supposed to be made public, or they took a guess and made an assumption, oh, maybe these won't work and we'll just put it out there. That's a pretty big guess, to be honest, especially since there's still a lot of conversation around the idea of PlayStation 5 backwards compatibility, but still, I don't think I would expect it at this point. It'd be a cool surprise, but it does sound like Jim Ryan isn't that interested in backwards compatibility as it is, so I just wouldn't expect the PS5 to be able to play PS3, PS2, or PS1 games unless you're using PlayStation Now and you can stream it. Oh, and we've been talking about the Ubisoft Forward event that would be happening sometime in September. Looks like it is now official. Ubisoft put out a trailer telling us that it will take place September 10th, noon Pacific, so that'd be 3 p.m. Eastern time, and they talked a bit about some games that would be there, specifically the revamp of Gods and Monsters. That's Immortals, Phoenix Rising, and not really sure what we're going to get out of that one, but that's probably the most interesting thing to me right now with that. Oh, and of course, the Prince of Persia remake that was accidentally leaked out. I'm trying to figure out if that is just the original one, like from way back in the day, the early 90s even, or if it will really be a remake of some of the 3D Prince of Persia games like Sands of Time, for example. I'm hoping that's the case, but because I want that, it's probably just going to be the original that's like a remake or something. I thought they already did that though, so who knows? Maybe they're remaking the remake for current consoles. Sure, Ubisoft, why not? But we could always even get surprised by Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I might be reaching now, but we can all dream, right? Also, if you're someone who likes to save money and take advantage of some of the different sales that'll pop up on the different digital storefronts, it looks like Sony will be starting one today with their essential picks, and there's a fairly large list right now on their website. I haven't seen any details about which game will be which percentage off, but they have some pretty good ones up there, and it looks like it is being headlined by The Last of Us Part 2, as well as games like God of War. Although God of War has already been on sale several times, been pretty cheap, but they have some others on there. It's, like I said, it's a fairly long list. I saw Ace Combat. I like Ace Combat. That's a good one. There's also the Batman Return to Arkham. So it might be worth checking out. I believe Gran Turismo Sport is there as well, just to see if there's anything you wanted to pick up digitally. Most of it, I'm going to say, will go over to the PS5, specifically from first party. So if you are thinking about getting a PS5 and you just missed the PlayStation 4 generation, might actually be worth to pick up a game like God of War, for example, because I have a feeling that game's going to look absolutely insane on the PS5. And guys, just some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're going to start right away with these Nvidia RTX 30 series cards because I was blown away yesterday by the presentation that they put on. They talked about some other things, but obviously the main event was going to be which cards are you unveiling, how are they going to perform, and what kind of pricing are we looking at? Because after getting done with something like the RTX 2080, where that was very expensive, I was expecting to pay $1,200, $1,300 for something like an RTX 3080. It's actually about half that price though. When they started talking about performance especially, I thought it was gonna get out of control. But let's go over some of the cards here. You can see this was put up by AnandTech. It was probably the best chart that I could find to kind of show off how it compares even to the 2080 Ti, which, if you bought a 2080 Ti in like the last 6 months, this might be kind of painful, I'm gonna be honest with you, just to see what we have here. But let's go across the board. They have the RTX 3090, the RTX 3080, and the 3070. Now, the 3070 on its own is $500, and it appears to actually outperform the 2080 Ti, like straight up, just flat out, just outperforms it. You go up from there to the RTX 3080, and there have already been some tests from Digital Foundry that had hands-on with percentage benchmarks, so they couldn't show frame rate, but they did an awesome job kind of showcasing how the 3080 stacks up to something like the 2080 Ti, which would be the outgoing big performer from the 20 series. Yeah, it's about double that in some instances, which is super impressive because that card is going to be $700, and it'll be available in roughly 2 weeks. If you go on Nvidia's site right now, you can click notify me and they will send you an email when, I guess, pre-orders go live. I'm already signed up. I'm grabbing the 3080. That card, from what they were showing, looks really, really good in terms of value for the amount of money you're putting in there. So I'm on board with the 3080, but just for the memes, I thought about the 3090. This card is massive. I think he took it out of his oven. He was doing the whole presentation out of his kitchen, and I believe it was just in his oven. He just hid video cards around his kitchen, and it was huge. Like, he just kind of held up this massive 3090 video card you can see, and it really was that image that we had talked about before. Now, the 3090 appears to be geared towards 8K 60 frames per second, which I do wonder how many people would actually take advantage of 8K, but just to put in perspective here, the RTX 3080 has 10 gigabytes of GDDR6X memory. The RTX 3090 has 24 gigabytes. It is a beast. It has 10,496 CUDA cores compared to the 8,704 of the 3080, and it does come in at that price point of $1,499. Yes, it is more than double the price of the RTX 3080, which, by the way, I want to point out right there that there is a fairly large price difference, which means that in about 6 or 7 months, I'm sure we'll probably start hearing rumors of the 3080 Ti to kind of slot in between those two. Now, since we keep talking about teraflop numbers and all this with current consoles, let's take a look at the teraflop count for these current cards as well, so you can kind of have a bit of a comparison. I know it's AMD versus Nvidia, but just take a look here. The RTX 3070 has 20.4 teraflops, the RTX 3080 has 29.8 teraflops, and then the ridiculous RTX 3090 has 35.7 teraflops. Yes, these, in comparison to, say, the Xbox Series X touting 12 teraflops, makes it look pretty weak in comparison. And pricing's not one-to-one. You still have to build a PC around these cards, obviously. And if you're gonna go for something like a 3080 even, you're gonna wanna make sure you have a CPU that won't bottleneck it, good RAM, fast storage, maybe all this stuff. It'll get pricey. But still, you do look at these cards, the GPUs that are being stored in them and all this, and you wonder, wow, that really does make next-gen consoles that we're all waiting for already look kind of behind a bit there, right? We're still waiting for AMD to show off their big Navi and RDNA 2, and we'll see what happens with that. But I have to say, from what Nvidia showed here, it's going to be tough for AMD to keep up with something like that RTX 3090, obviously. If they can at least do some sort of match to that 3080, I will be impressed. And maybe they can even edge out some of the budget market and introduce a pretty good $300 to $400 card so they can kind of take that over there. But hey, I'm on board with that 3080. So come September 17th, I'm going to be hopefully installing that unless it gets back ordered, because I think that is the card to get at $700. The value is there with the performance. So if you are looking to get the 3080, make sure you get notified at Nvidia's website. Sign up there. It's coming out on the 17th. If you want to wait for the 3090, they have the same deal there, but it'll be a week later on the 24th of September. And if you're looking at that $500 RTX 3070, you'll have to wait just a little longer into October to pick that up. Next up, let's talk about this update for the Nintendo eShop. For a while now, the Switch has been getting some pushback on its refund policies and the whole situation around pre-orders, where as soon as you pre-order something digitally, there's no refund. You can't cancel it, nothing like that. You kind of can. You can call Nintendo and go through the whole situation over the phone, and they'll do that thing where like, okay, this one time we'll do it for you, but you can't keep calling us about this or we'll start having to turn it down, right? But that has been a problem in different parts of the world, in certain countries where there have been straight up court cases over this. There's been a lot of pushback around this situation. So it looks like Nintendo is starting to at least move a bit. I will say they didn't do this just because they were trying to be nice. I think they did this mostly because they were forced into it. But let's take a look here. They posted this up on their Nintendo Japan website. It says, in the case of reservation purchases pre-download, it was not possible to cancel the reservation because the payment is completed at the same time as the application. But with the new reservation purchase, the settlement date is 7 days before the software distribution date until it is possible to cancel a reservation, that is. So I hope that eventually we get to a point where it is a lot easier to get a refund for a game that is just flat out bad, because the eShop is full of those games. And if you look at something like Steam, for example, you can play a game, I believe, for up to like 2 hours before you are locked in. So you can seriously just buy the game, play it for an hour, and you're like, wow, this is a really bad game. And then you can return it digitally and get your money back. To me, that makes the most sense, because obviously you'll have people take more chances on different indie games then, because they won't feel burned if the game is just bad. And I mean, there's a lot of like just shovelware junk at times on the eShop. Most of us go through it to get to the good stuff, right? So I like the idea of them exploring more, I guess, refund policies. And I guess this is the first step. Anyway, if you go into your account, pick your icon at the top, you can see your pre-orders that you've already made, and you can decide to cancel them right there in the UI for the eShop, which is good. You don't have to really talk to anyone on a phone or anything. I also noticed if you go over to the sales page, there are countdown timers right on the front. You don't have to go into like a game's info to see when the sale ends. Super useful, by the way. We had that one update where it like shows you the screenshots if you hover over it. Now we have this update where it has the countdown timer right on the front. So just some quality of life things also added. Here's hoping though, we get to a point where the eShop will just allow us to refund games without having to deal with any customer service agents or being on the phone for a while. And I hope we get to the point where it more adopts what Steam has done currently. Next up, let's talk about, once again, the Xbox Series S leaking out. Yes, so I think we all recognize at this point that obviously COVID played a massive part in why the Series S has not been announced, why we've had so many sporadic delays, announcements, reveals. It's been all over the place this year, but the Series S was certainly supposed to be announced a while ago. It's on marketing information. We're seeing it on the side of controllers that have just been sitting in the back of Best Buys, apparently. And here we go. Once again, another mention of the Series S. You can see this tweet here. This was put out by Brendan, said, I got a new controller for my Xbox since mine was broken. Interestingly enough, the Game Pass Ultimate Trial Code sheet mentions the unannounced Xbox Series S. It's definitely a thing. Yep. The Series S is it's currently also in like XDKs that developers have. There's a full profile for it now. It's been passed around. We're just waiting for this thing to be announced, but it only makes sense to announce it when you are ready to announce the price, because then you can't explain why the Series S exists. You can say, oh, it's the cheaper model, and then people will say, well, why are you telling us about it if you're not ready to tell us how much cheaper? What kind of advantage do we have here? Is it a $200 advantage? Is it a $100 advantage? That's where we are. And I mean, we're 2 months out. Like, they're going to have to tell us the price soon. because pre-orders will have to happen. Retailers would like to get pre-orders underway yesterday, so once the price is ready to be unveiled, so is the Series S. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Tokyo Game Show 2020 online. It's going to be fully live streamed. It's starting September 24th, and all the usuals will be there that you would expect, except for Nintendo and Sony. That's the odd thing. In fact, the one company out of the big three that will be there is Microsoft. They'll be there next to companies like Capcom, Koei Tecmo, Sega, Atlas. I mean, the list will go on there, but to see Microsoft show up here where the other two don't is odd, but it gets a little crazier. Microsoft is going to be opening this whole event for Tokyo Game Show 2020. Gamatsu actually had the graphic and even all the descriptions for the different events. I will leave that link down below if you want to go through and try to sync up time zones and see when you want to check out your favorite company and see what they have to announce at Tokyo Game Show. But Microsoft, as you can see, the first block, they will have a 50-minute Tokyo Game Show Showcase 2020. The Xbox Tokyo Game Show Showcase is a place where everyone can have fun, featuring messages from Japanese creators, latest news on Microsoft Flight Simulator for PC, a Japanese Minecraft community update, and information on recently announced games. Now, I can't imagine they will go to this event without there being pricing for the Series X and pricing for the Series S. I don't think they're going to focus heavily on Japan when they start shipping these systems out, because the Xbox One doesn't really sell there at all. It's a struggle. If they sell 100 units in a week, it's amazing. And then look over and the Switch sells 100,000 units. So you can kind of put that in perspective there, just how few Xboxes actually sell in Japan. It really is tough. And it seems like at least they've been trying to make some moves to just increase their market share there, doing things like getting Yakuza Like a Dragon as a next-gen game first for the Xbox was surprising. No one really expected that in the West, right? So I am curious what they will do in Japan. Maybe a surprise announcement, doing something. They have been working with Sega quite a bit to bring those games over to the West, so maybe they have a Japanese developing studio that can come in and announce something brand new for the audience there that would get them excited for the Xbox. Or maybe they really just show up, talk about Flight Simulator, talk about a Minecraft update, and that's it. We'll see. It's 50 minutes to fill, though, so you feel like they at least have something to talk about. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Alt saying, I mean, the quality of emulation in PlayStation Classic really did resonate quite well with what Ryan said. You know what? I did wonder that at one point, because he was there, but then he kind of took over as that was being made, from what I remember, because he switched roles with another person, and that, I guess, was probably already in development then. And I almost wonder if he was like, you know what, just push it out the door, because when that came out, it really wasn't done well. It was head-scratchingly bad in some places, and now the community kind of took over the whole thing and made it into a pretty cool little emulator box. So it is funny how Jim Ryan looks at backwards compatibility as just being completely unnecessary. And I mean, there are some stats that show that a lot of people don't really use it, even with the Xbox One currently, but it's still a nice thing to have. And I mean, I would like to have a PS2 Classic someday. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's Nvidia's new lineup for the RTX 30 series. Are you interested in any, or are you just going to wait for that 3080 Ti that you know Nvidia is going to bring out in less than a year now? Gotta say, that 3080 though is looking pretty good at that pricing, or maybe the 3070, since it seems to match or maybe even exceed a little bit that 2080 Ti. Also, what about Nintendo adding the ability to cancel your pre-orders? It seems like a small step, but at least it's Nintendo making a step in the right direction, I guess. And then, do you think Microsoft has anything serious lined up for Tokyo Game Show, or do you think they're just going to show up and talk about Minecraft and Flight Simulator? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.